Force Gemini is my favorite Rareware game, and maybe even my favorite N64 game, which is hard for me to say because there are some Mondo cool games on the Ultra 64 and I'm neck deep in nostalgia bias. Force Gemini is peak Rareware, not because it's the best game they ever made. It's probably my favorite, but I recognize best is subjective. Rather, Force Gemini is rare at their most themselves. Great graphics and music, big levels with secrets, tons of replay value, overtaxed system hardware leading to poor frame rates all the time, and tons of shit to collect. This is as rare as Rare got, a superb game all around with just a few classic Rareware foibles. I want you to play it, and I'm gonna try to convince you to right now. The footage you're seeing now is emulated, but I captured the rest of the footage on real hardware, so that's what we're going to use in a minute. I won't judge you if you choose to emulate this game, but I want to represent it honestly, and honestly, the frame rate is bad. This is what gaming was like in the 90s, kids. The frame rates were bad, the picture was blurry because nobody actually owned a Sony Trinitron, and the afternoon sunlight coming through the windows reflected off the huge pane of curved glass like a fucking disco ball, so you had to play with sunglasses on. Let's switch on the venerated 64-bit warhorse and talk about Force Gemini. In Force Gemini, you play as all three members of Jet Force, a brother and sister and Robodog team of space cops. They get roped into defending a race of primitive, peace-loving bear people called tribals from an evil space emperor called Mizar, who controls an army of insectoid drones. As the game starts, the three main characters are split up and you have to reunite them by playing through three separate story paths. You start out only able to select Juno, but after a few levels you rescue his sister Vela and can switch to her or continue Juno's path. A few levels into Vela's path and she reunites with the hover dog Lupus, and once again you can choose to switch around or continue. Along the way you also pick up Floyd, a sentient gun with a propeller beanie who had a change of heart and follows whichever character is active. Each character goes through a few different levels set on planets or enemy capital ships before eventually arriving at a different part of Mizar's palace. Each character in turn enters Mizar's pyramid ship and is captured and placed in stasis. Once all three characters are in stasis, Mizar shows up and you get the climactic boss battle. Except you kinda don't. We'll come back to this. Force Gemini is partly a run-and-gun third-person shooter and partly a quasi-first-person shooter. Normal play is from third-person with a fairly zoomed-out camera. You can run and jump and shoot, but your ability to fight from this mode is pretty limited. Unlike a more modern third-person shooter, you don't have a full-time aim control slaved to the camera. When you hold the R button, you enter the game's quasi-first-person mode, which pulls up the reticle and zooms in while turning your character model transparent so you can aim. The controls are a bit weird, but when you get used to them they work really well. In the aim mode, your controls are reversed, so the D buttons become movement and the thumbstick is used for fine aiming. In a sense, JFG plays like the N64 port of Turok while you're in aim mode, and Ocarina of Time when you're not. In the normal mode, the low camera angle and perfect amount of auto-aim make for awesome run-and-gun sequences, and the aim mode works well for slower close-in work. The game does have really crummy platforming, given the floaty jump controls, weird camera angles, and bad frame rate. None of it is very fun, but it's used sparingly to break up the levels. For the most part, though, each level is just action. Bloody, colorful, high-octane, bug-blasting action. The different levels have a mix of long-range engagements, close-quarters fighting, and tangling with swarms of flying gun drones. To aid you in your quest and keep you from getting bored, Force Gemini has an absurdly large arsenal of fucking awesome weapons. Of course you have a boring starter pistol, the quirk here being that you can still shoot it after running out of ammo, albeit slower and at a reduced power. This is unlikely to ever happen, but it's an interesting idea. Even a bland gun like this is still pretty satisfying since the game has excellent sound effects and awesome impact effects. Hitting a drone causes a spray of blood and a location-dependent animation, and you can blast off limbs and heads with pretty much the whole arsenal. Next up is the machine gun, which is one of my absolute favorite video game guns ever. No shit. Force Gemini's machine gun sounds awesome and feels great. It's thrilling to unleash a long burst from this thing. The sound effects, spray of tracers, falling brass, and shower of blood and body parts, oh man. Let's enjoy a highlight reel right now. This thing is on par with the assault rifle from Marathon 2 or maybe Half-Life. There is nothing better than when it's literally impossible to get bored of one of the staple weapons of a game's arsenal. One of your other primary weapons is the plasma shotgun, which can be rapid-fired in a pinch or charged up to splatter almost any enemy with one or two well-placed shots. I love it. Jet Force Gemini has not one but two rocket launchers, the very useful homing rocket launcher which can lock onto a bunch of enemies by sweeping them with the reticule, allowing you to fire away until they're all dead. Once again, the sound effects and visuals really make this thing shine. The other rocket launcher is the Tri-Rocket Launcher, a weapon better than the BFG, better than the Cerebral Bore, better than the Tau Cannon, and better than whatever else basic bitch polygon journos like to fill their tedious top 10 lists with. The Tri-Rocket Launcher, for when you absolutely positively have to kill every last motherfucking drone and or tribal in the room. There's a sniper rifle which doesn't see a lot of use but supplies satisfying gory headshots when you land a hit. Multiple thrown weapons including grenades, cluster grenades, flares, remote mines, proxy mines, fish food for some reason, and a homing techno shuriken that locks on and cuts off heads. Jet Force Gemini also has a flamethrower and the Shocker, both of which seem to be in the game just to inflict cruelty on drones or maybe even tribals. Ammo for both is extremely limited and they're not that useful, though the flamethrower is one of the few ways to immediately counter the barricade drones that carry ballistic tower shields. This game is borderline sadistic at times. On occasion you run into yellow bugs who throw down their weapons and surrender as soon as you so much as gesticulate in their general direction. Usually you can choose to kill them or let them live, but there's one group of yellow bugs guarding a secret spaceship part behind a life force door. That door doesn't open until all life signs are extinguished, so get to it. Aside from drones in different colors, the game also has multiple types of flying enemy that attack in swarms, which are pretty fun to fight, especially when the game is nice enough to provide you with a full pack of machine gun ammo and an invincibility power-up right next to them. There are also big drones that guard doors and deal heavy damage with lasers or rocket launchers. On one level, Juno visits the planet Tofred, which was turned into a lifeless swamp inhabited by fucking zombies that hurl their bile at you instead of shooting. Characteristically, these can take a lot of damage, but are still vulnerable to a plasma haircut with a shotgun. Jet Force Gemini is really very grim, but the macabre atmosphere and general darkness of the game is tempered by that classic Rareware irreverence. This is a game in which a cute, cuddly Build-A-Bear can be splattered into a crimson shower while its head flies off into geostationary orbit. And it's also a game in which you can laugh like a 6-year-old because some guy had his underwear stolen and hung from a tree. Jet Force Gemini has a bit of a cartoony art style, but it certainly doesn't feel cartoonish. At the same time, the humorous NPCs and fun secrets keep the shower of blood and dismembered teddy bears from really killing the action vibe. There's cool shit to do on the side in pretty much every level, like alternate paths that lead you to secret levels, hidden guns, and minigames. Most levels have a time trial minigame where you play as your floating robot buddy Floyd and have to navigate an obstacle course, collecting stuff and trying to beat the clock. The level I-Core even has the Big Bug Fun Club, where you can transform yourself into a drone and boogie down with Mizar's off-duty drones. Or go to the arcade and play a kart racing minigame. And throughout all of it, you're treated to hands down the best Rareware soundtrack of the period. Robin Beanland's score is spectacular. Each track is diverse and atmospheric, and they all fit the levels perfectly. I can't pick a favorite. Listen to all of it, it's perfect. Alright, back to the plot. After the three characters reunite at Mizar's palace, Lupus sends him packing and you unlock the other 3/4 of the entire game. Mizar flees to his asteroid base and heads for Earth, and in order to catch him you need to repair a tribal spaceship by finding all the missing parts. But the tribal leader King Jeff won't give you the keys unless you rescue every tribal on every level. This is where the game gets awesome and retarded at the same time. Each character gets an armor upgrade that includes a jetpack, and then you're free to revisit every level with each of them. The characters each have their own navigation ability that really comes into play here. Juno is immune to fire, Vela can swim underwater, and Lupus has hover boots that allow him to cross gaps. Each character also picks up different colored key cards, giving them access to previously locked portions of other characters' levels. And the jetpack upgrades give you access to yet more areas that were off limits before. The game opens up like crazy here. Each level can be revisited multiple times by multiple characters to unlock huge new sections. You probably saw a lot of stuff just out of reach on the first run, which is partly why the game feels so huge. It's that Metroidvania feeling of, oh fuck, I'm gonna have to come back here when I have the blue key, or I'll have to come back as Juno to cross that lava pit. The meat of the game is in this latter section, where you scour levels for secret areas containing ammo capacity upgrades, bonus weapons, ship parts, and tribals to rescue. It's huge, fun, and impossible. Force Gemini rather infamously requires you to get 100% of the collectibles in order to access the final level and boss. This takes the Rareware habit of making N64 collectathons to its logical conclusion. I'll just be real with you, I've never finished Force Gemini. I still might do it someday, because every once in a while I boot up my old save and spend an hour forcing my way through getting the tribals on one of the planets before realizing why I quit in the first place. My old save has 34 hours on the clock. Give it another decade and I'll probably get this one in the bag. I'm not the kind of person who gets 100% on games. I'm pretty sure the only games I've finished completely are Quantum Break, Subnautica, and Red Dead Redemption, none of which is difficult to 100% in the slightest. Finding the spaceship parts and rescuing all the tribals is actually a fun puzzle. The first few times you go through a level, you can easily identify which character is needed to navigate certain obstacles or open certain doors. It doesn't take that much in the way of mental gymnastics to figure out how to revisit the level and collect hidden weapons and rescue the tribals. The status of the tribals on each level is easily accessible in the menu, and it probably won't take that many tries to get them all. Finding the spaceship parts may drive you to purchase a strategy guide to preserve a bit of sanity. So, yeah, Force Gemini is a fucking collectathon, but it's a collectathon with a purpose. You're not just finding random bullshit and incrementing a number in a stats menu, you're finding weapons and ammo upgrades which help you in combat. You're rescuing tribals, which is the main plot thrust of the game to begin with, and you're finding parts to finish a spaceship so you can fly to the final boss lair and kick his ass. If the tribal toil gets too annoying, you can always take a break and blow off some heads. I mean steam. I mean heads. Ha! This game is rated T. For added fun, Jet Force has multiplayer, which is a bit tacked on, but still an enjoyable diversion. The maps are pretty good actually, and the unlockable characters provide nice variety. The best characters are obviously Lupus and Tank Lupus in that order, so you should probably house rules it so nobody can use them. Quick aside, if you're the guy who picks Oddjob, you're just a bad human being and you don't deserve to have friends. I mean, Jesus Christ, don't you want a victory you can be proud of, you little shit? Sorry, old memories. Anyway, the deathmatch is alright, the kart racing mode is pretty fun, and there's even a co-op mode where the second player controls Floyd, the floating gun drone. This has to be one of the earliest examples of a girlfriend mode. The second player can't do anything but shoot, it's kind of like Mario Galaxy. Having two reticules on screen gets pretty chaotic, but Floyd has no ammo limit and can shoot pretty fast, so if you're having a hard time getting through a section, ask your friend or girlfriend or little sister to throw out a little extra damage while you play. Well, that's Force Gemini. It's my favorite N64 game, and therefore my favorite Rareware game pretty much by default. If editing this video doesn't make me sick of looking at it, I'll make a real effort to finally finish the damn thing, and bring you along for the ride if I can. Thanks for watching, thanks to the people who support the show on Patreon, and thanks to the Discord members for being a cool bunch of folks. See you next time. JFG is peak Rareware. Rareware. That is a shit word. Force Gemini Gemini? Wow. Jesus Christ. In a sense, Force Gemini plays like the N64 port of Turok while you're in aim mode, and Ocarina of Time when you're not. It's not pronounced Ocarina. Fuck. God damn it.